Thank you so much for coming to join us for another episode of the StashCast, where we have interesting conversations with interesting people focused around commercial real estate and prop tech. The StashCast is brought to you by Needle. What if you could use data and analytics to predict real estate transactions? You can with Needle. Come check it out at Needle, NEDL.us to learn more. All right, I'm excited today. We have Jose Castrejon with MSP Design here to join us. He's the president of the firm, and we've known each other for a couple of years, and I've just always enjoyed having a conversation with you. And I was like, you would make a great podcast guest. So here we are.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the invite. You're right. We've known each other for a little bit of time, but and same here. I enjoy our conversations, and we're always trying to figure out, what's best for our community and working together. So I really appreciate the conversation.
For sure. Absolutely. So, like I said, I know who you are, but for, the others, the listeners at home, why don't you give a quick background on who you are and what you do?
Sure. I appreciate that. Well, I'm a landscape architect, graduated from Ohio State. So I'm having a good day today because, the national championship.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Was recruited to come down here about 27 years ago from Columbus to start a landscape architecture department, or restart a landscape architecture department here at MSP Design, and moved the family down here, and it worked out great for me, and got promoted and moved on to be president, which was a great honor on this, historic firm since it's been around since 1856. Most people don't know that we've been around that long. But so it's an honor to be asked to be the current caretaker of the company, and as a landscape architect with a background in obviously that type of design expertise, is great to be part of a mix of professional folks here at McGill Smith Punchin that have architecture, engineering, surveying, planning, and interior design. So it's been a great ride, and it's a great place to live down here in Cincinnati.
Yeah. So in preparation for this, you sent me a book on the history of the firm. Like, for any organization to last, 175 years or so, that takes a lot. I guess maybe if you could give us a little bit about how they did it. I mean, that's fascinating in and of itself.
Yeah. And, you kind of, once you grasp it and you're part of it, of that history, I think it simply comes down to having relationships with your clients. And, I always like to tell the story. Yes, we have the great history on projects and but why, right? And it's about the relationships. And the example that I use that I think keeps it nice and simple is we worked with one of the landscape architects that kind of started the profession and helped design Spring Grove Cemetery.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I believe it was 1856 where we got the commission to work on Spring Grove Cemetery. And we worked with Adolf Strauss, who was a landscape architect, and kind of joined forces to develop the design Spring Grove, and then did other cemeteries throughout the country. And kind of that's how our firm started, because of that relationship. And the key factor to that is that Spring Grove is still our client. We've been doing work for them since then. We're there all the time as what we call them. We hope we are their trusted advisor, that they pick up the phone and call us to do whatever is needed to help them do their thing.
Yeah. And for, I guess, people that aren't from Cincinnati, I would just Google Spring Grove Cemetery, because it is a massive plot of land, but it's also beautiful because it is so old. And you've got, obviously it's a cemetery, but it's almost an attraction in and of itself. So.
Yeah. And it's also an arboretum, and they do program it quite a bit. And it is beautiful. It's a great place to kind of just experience being out in the open, but also just the history. It's amazing.
So I guess there's a couple of different directions we could take the conversation. I'm curious, so you were recruited down from, you grew up in Columbus?
I was at a job there in Columbus. I actually had we probably need another podcast just from where I came from, but I grew up in Mexico and then came up here to go to school, but
Oh,
ended
that's
up in
amazing.
Ohio through college and work, and then got recruited to come down here.
Wow, that's fascinating. That is super amazing. So, all right, how did you come from Mexico to end up at OSU?
Okay. So my mom was a designer, grew up in the New England area, and went to Syracuse University, became an exchange student down in Mexico, met my father, got married, and that's kind of how she stayed down there. And my
Mhm.
brother and I were born down there. She was an interior designer and did a lot of resort work and had a lot of friends up here and family. So my brother and I got up here to go to school
Mhm.
and fell in love with what she did as a designer into these resorts. Went to Ohio State because they had a landscape architecture program. And that's kind of how I ended up staying in Ohio. Obviously met my wife, my beautiful wife, and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And then worked in several places in Ohio, and then got recruited to come down here to Cincinnati, and been here for 27 years.
Mhm. That's cool. That's a good story. So, landscape architecture, it is something that I think most people, when they think about real estate or commercial real estate, they don't necessarily think about the landscape architecture of it. But especially here in Cincinnati, because it's so hilly, it's, I imagine it's pretty involved. I guess for myself, even like how would you define it? And like, because when you and I are talking, you're like, hey, here's the site, or here's a golf course or something that,
Right.
wants to be turned into something else. So like help me understand better what you do, because you get involved with developers on the very
Right.
front end of things. So we're working with the same client on a deal up in Lebanon.
Right.
You were involved much earlier in the process than we were. So I'll let
Yeah.
you roll.
Yeah. I think landscape architecture has always been kind of that design arm of a lot of either companies or sole proprietors that is maybe misunderstood. Most people think that we pick plants out and
Right.
do landscape plan around your house, and we're done. But we obviously do a lot more than that. And I think the partnerships and the collaboration we have with other design professions is critical in that our job is to help guide and design the outdoor environment, not just to make it work and make sure that it functions, but it also has to have form, that it's a space for people to enjoy and people to gather and have community. So our job is to make that outdoor environment, kind of blend in with the built environment, with a building, and how does that space interact and create a sense of community or sense of place, whether it's a mixed use development. Think about all the outdoor spaces and all the cool spots that are designed, that a lot of people around here design, and including myself, that where you hang out with the family on the outs and hang out and have something to drink, something to eat, but you're enjoying the outdoor environment.
Mhm.
That's what we create. That happen, and it just happens to have plants in it, right? It's one of the things that
Right.
are only known for the one piece. And as you mentioned, we'd like to get in early on the project so we can utilize our expertise to help developers or help clients or collaborate with other design professionals to help locate where's the best place for the building or orientation. Meaning, when we design, let's say a simple restaurant, and we're working at where do we put the patio? Well, the patio or the outdoor dining has a good location when it's not being beat down by the late afternoon sun and now becomes uncomfortable. So that makes a difference. So we can work on that. So there's a lot of little things that kind of blend into what we do and really kind of help create that outdoor environment and create places where people enjoy being outside.
Interesting. Yeah. So I guess to think about it, you're there at the very front end when a developer is evaluating a piece of dirt. They think that the economics of the deal work, and now they're like, okay, we're gonna we're gonna evaluate this seriously. How do we lay it out, essentially? And then what are
Right.
the features that we want to work with that's already on the land, and then what do we have to bring in bulldozers for, I guess.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um, uh, uh, I would ask what's your favorite project, but that you've worked on, but you're everywhere seemingly. So maybe around town, like what are some local notable projects that you've worked on, or just in general? I mean, before we started, you're like, yeah, we're doing a bunch of work up in Columbus on data centers. So
The beauty of the other piece of landscape architecture is that every day is something different. We can be working on a Parks and Rec project. We can be working on a mixed use development and doing a multifamily amenity package with a pool deck and a pool and outdoor, environment. So it's kind of neat to be able to come to work every day and be able to do all these things, or helps a developer solve a problem about density and things like that. But it when you graduate with a degree in landscape architecture, and I think any design profession, there's always those projects that you remember, and then there's the ones that are like, wow, this is like being in school again, and it's kind of fun to design. And it happened to be, I have several, but the most recent one that has been really, really cool to work on it's the USS Cincinnati submarine. I don't know if you've heard about that or not, but
no.
the USS Cincinnati was decommissioned in the 80s, and it helped end the Cold War, right? Because of the presence of our military and all that. Well, because of the name of the boat and the submarine, the local Navy League has parts and pieces of that submarine, and we are in the process of building a memorial slash educational slash park plaza that honors USS Cincinnati, and we're going to put it at the Voice of America Park.
Oh, wow.
Voice of America also helped end the Cold War, so it's kind of neat that we have kind of the history behind the Butler County area, the history of USS Cincinnati, and we're creating this outdoor plaza space that helps honor, the people that, helped us end the Cold War. But at the same time, it's an educational component. It'll be a place to gather. It'll have opportunities for a park-like amenities. So it's a lot of fun to design projects like that. So right now, that's the one that comes to mind, and it's really exciting to be asked to do something so cool for our community.
Hmm. Does that Voice of America Park, does that have one of the ancient mounds in it?
And no, it does not. The mound that you see there in the back is some of the soil that was used to build the interchange,
Oh,
and
it's just a pile of dirt then.
they created a sledding hill out of it. So might
Yeah.
as well take advantage of it.
Have you?
A neat little story about that one.
Yeah.
The administrator way back when, they did it without really, planning it to be a amenity, but there was not enough slope at the very top of the hill to get a kid going down a sled. So he asked us to make it a little bit steeper. So we did a little quick design to make it steeper, so parents didn't throw out their back, pushing their kid down the hill.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody wants that. Have you ever run into, I mean, I'm sure you have. I was talking with a developer and they're like, yeah, we were developing like a 300 unit deal up on like Springfield Pike. And he's like, they found an Indian burial site. Have you, like, what do you do when you run into that?
Yeah, I didn't quite run into something that historic, I guess, and it could have been. We were working. This was before I came down here. I was working on a athletic piece of University of Dayton. I don't know if you know anything about University of Dayton. They have their area, I think they call the ghetto, but
Yeah.
it's probably not the official name. They had some athletic facilities back there. There was an old railroad embankment, and I happened to be the project landscape architect at the time. So I was getting all the calls about any construction issues that they were having. Well, I did get that call that they had found something that looked like human remains in the railroad embankment. So after I picked up my jaw, went back there and helped out. So we had to stop everything and all the work. And it ended up being that it was, from nothing recent, obviously, but it was kind of from the time of the when they were built the railroad, that they must have gone through an old family burial or something.
Oh,
And
geez.
yeah, so slowed the project down a little bit, but it all worked out. But that's some scary calls there. But that's the closest I've gotten to anything interesting like that. That's the call you don't want to get.
No, for sure. Yeah, these guys were telling me that they had to have a crew of archaeologists come out
Yeah,
and like walk the ground to make
yeah,
sure that they had found everything.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah, and yeah, it's great. I know sometimes it's hard for developers, the front end stuff when we're working on the feasibility study. You guys have, you're working with environmental folks and other folks to make sure like wetlands are being taken care of and so on and so forth. So I understand that there's obviously value in that, so you don't get into a situation where you find stuff when it's too late and more expensive. You try to capture those things early, and there's great consultants around here that give you that service. But yeah, you don't want to get there when it's too late.
yeah, I guess sometimes though it's like you don't even know until you start
Yeah, bad
disturbing the
luck.
dirt.
Exactly,
So,
bad luck. Yep.
well, I'm curious, you started off as just, a worker bee essentially, and
Yeah.
rose to the occasion to become the president of the firm. How did that happen? What did you do?
I think I think it was my, you know, I had a great group of mentors and folks that I leaned on to gain insight on not just how to be a good designer, but good good with people, and understand that it takes a team to do our best work for our clients. And I think that's been my philosophy from the very beginning, that yeah, hopefully I'm good at what I do, but I think it comes down to people around you that you put those people around you to create that team. And I think people that were at the time, leaders and past presidents, saw that I was good at getting people to collaborate, work together, not worry about taking the credit, and just making the right product, giving the right product to our clients, and continuing our legacy as a company for over so many years. To me, I think that's why one of the reasons that they selected me, because I'm good at building those teams to deal with our clients and have, the best interests of our clients. So I'm very honored that they chose me, and I have a great group of folks that are young, that are well experienced, they have more experience than I do, and we all work well together. So I'm honored to be asked to be that, hopefully the glue that helps them do their thing, because they're very talented.
Yeah. I mean, I've personally found, so I'm doing a development deal right now. And I've learned from brokerage as well that, you surround yourself with good people and you allow them to do what they do best. And you just, in both of these instances, you just let them, you guide and direct, but let them do what they do best, and everything's going to work out. And there's always going to be bumps along the road.
Sure.
Like I've had a bunch of bumps, but
Yeah, exactly.
for
Yeah.
the most part, it is solvable. It's just a matter of time, money,
Yeah.
effort, energy,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
all that. So I guess that's a good transition. This isn't necessarily a LEED certified building, but we're going to have, I think, LED fixtures and
Right.
low flow. When a building is classified as LEED, what does that mean?
Well, a LEED certification is a standard that's been set by, that organization to classify, but also maintain that facility to meet the certain standards, right? And you have to go through this checklist and review, not just as you're building it, and actually as you're designing and building it, but also as you're after commission, as it evolves. And, that is a great, I think, standard to meet. It is, it does cost money to do that and to maintain that. But I think the value that we see in that is you can apply those lead principles to a lot of the things that you do. You might not be lead certified or lead gold or lead platinum on buildings or sites, but I think giving the value to your clients to be able to implement some of these um, standards to your interior spaces or exterior spaces that give you both value in comfort, let's say, or in savings, but at the same time, you can actually, it can also be cost effective, because the last thing we want to do is, if you can't afford to do something, just design it and it just sits on a shelf. That doesn't make sense either. But how can you apply some of these principles and apply them? And a lot of it, I think, in my opinion, is common sense. But at the same time, having those guidelines really help you understand how you can do your design work, but also be cautious of the environment, the comfort of your user, because that's a big piece of lead, right? It is comfort of the user. And so I think it's been a great exercise, but I think now that it's evolved, we apply it to a lot of the things that we do, whether we're going after lead certification or not.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say, we design or build to lead specs. We just don't go through the certification process.
Right.
So that's interesting. So does that have to do with like lead certified and green? In my mind, that means the building is, using energy efficient materials and smart monitoring systems. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, but then also comfort of the users, but then you have to go through and justify to make sure that it actually is performing that way. Right.
Oh, so
And
once
that's
it's
where,
built.
yeah, right. So that's where it does start take some dollars and cents to add another layer to it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just
Yeah.
that it does cost money.
So this is a good lead into prop tech. What sort of, prop tech solutions, or smart solutions have you seen come into the market over the past few years, maybe?
Well, as a landscape architect, I think it's, I'm not an architect. We have plenty of architects here in our office that are also lead, but from the site point of view, is you're starting to see a lot more site features and amenities that, when applied, are really helping the environment, but at the same time are helping with, think about any just little things. How many times have you seen a street tree out on a streetscape that is put into an environment that is harsh, right? Think of a tree in a hole in our environment, but now there's technology and systems that you can use that help improve the growth of the root system. So what do you get in return? You get larger trees that are help with the heat island effect. They help store water, eliminate runoff, store water to help stormwater management, and and they flower. Okay, so now you get a value by some of this technology that's come into play, or this design features that you can apply. Because think of any community that you're going to be required to do street trees, right, in a streetscape. So why not do it correctly and allow these trees to survive, but then apply some of these green initiatives that are going to help the tree, but then give you value from all these other things that, that I just mentioned. Imagine all the streetscapes having these type of technology. We would have greener downtowns and cleaner air and, better places to sit and, kind of think of the most beautiful streetscape you see in your head. We can apply those principles. And that's just one example, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you see like a garden, either apartment or office complex. I think offices, or even a retail center that's just got this massive parking lot, and it just
Right.
bakes anything that's in there. It's like, wouldn't some trees be, worked in here? Wouldn't that be beneficial? of value.
Right. Yeah.
So that's just an interesting thing. What is the difference between a retention pond and a detention pond?
So they both function the same way, right? They're storing water during a rain event and then releasing it at a predetermined rate to avoid downstream impact. The difference between a detention, D is that I always cheat by D means dry, right? A detention pond usually
Oh,
is that it detains water in a low area, and a retention pond is wet, right? It
mhm.
has the bottom of it is actually the water. So when you see a retention pond and you see a lake that is part of a retention pond, the between the water level and the soil beneath it, it means nothing other than it's water. It's holding water from the water surface to the levee or the top of that slope. That is in theory the detention part of a retention pond, if that makes sense. So the storage volume that you're storing engineering wise in a retention pond is from the water surface to the outlet,
The top. Yeah.
the
Oh,
top,
the outlet. Yeah.
the
Okay.
outlet, right? The detention pond is from the ground level, the dirt, the grass, to the outlet. So, and if you start throwing aesthetics at it, obviously a retention pond looks a lot better because we have a lot more, we can do a lot more with obviously water, putting a jet in there, creating
Yeah.
some noise and all that. Detentions can become very ugly, but I think there's strategies that we've been doing with creating wetlands, creating habitat. Think about habitat. That's another way of looking at green infrastructure, from pollinating stations for monarch butterflies to, native plant material that you can do to minimize grass cutting. That's another green initiative. For example, for Butler Tech up in Butler County, we got rid of most of their lawn on their campus and planted it with native plant material and to help stop them from cutting the grass all week, pretty much. They started one day and ended it, and they started over again.
Yeah.
Where we created more of a meadow and, created pollinating stations and so on and so forth. So that's how you can apply some design principles to your basic detention and retention facilities.
I like the mnemonic device that D means dry. So that
Yeah.
I get it now.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you'll see them with it looks like a sewer grate that's almost built up. And
Yeah.
that's the point at which the water then
Yep.
overflows and goes into the stormwater system, I guess.
Right. You hold it until a set time so it releases slower so it minimizes downstream erosion and other things, obviously.
Do you have to line those ponds with anything specific, like clay or?
Correct. It depends. We have great civil engineers here, so I'm going to be putting my civil engineer hat on. That's where when you do soil borings and work with other consultants to determine the types of soils. Usually around here, there's plenty of clay, so you can line them with clay. Sometimes there's areas where you have to do other things, but around here, it's usually not too bad with clays. The closer you get to rivers, you get more sand in there, and you got to really kind of make sure they don't leak. We've done underground detention too, where in unique sites and more urban sites, you have to pretty much store them underneath pavement and in an engineered method where it's underground and you don't see it, but it's still there. And obviously that's more costly.
Isn't the whole parking lot or parking garage at the banks, isn't that structured like as a flood break? Like
I don't know. I mean, we have worked on that project on the survey side, but I don't know the engineering, but it could be. I know that the park along the banks there is designed to flood in a good way. It's,
Yeah.
and which is a great idea. Whoever designed that did an awesome job doing that.
Interesting. Did you guys, so the site in Lebanon that we're I'm working on currently. I don't know if you guys are working on it any longer. You probably already did it, but it's interesting. He had 200 acres and there was a essentially a creek running through the middle of it. Did you guys
Right.
help him identify the that part and survey it out and say, "Hey, city, here's a park that you could have"? Because that's what he did. He
Right.
he had this beautiful green space in the middle, but it wasn't buildable. So he actually sold it to the city.
Yeah. And it's always that collaborative effort at the beginning to, you know, when you're working with a municipality and a developer, is there a win-win situation, right? Where you
Mhm.
can create an environment that is, if you simplify it, to create not a subdivision, but a community that can balance out the green space, the density that is needed by the developer to make the deal work, and then if you work with the community to maximize your open space, you know. So why not take advantage of the open space that cannot be built on or very difficult built on, make it an amenity, figure out a deal with the city to make it worth the while for the developer to come there. They get the density and it's a win-win. So we were involved in trying to help, you know, create a land plan in an environment that can meet the market demand by the types of housing, the right density, the right streets, making sure that we're moving enough dirt to make the deal work so we don't, really beat up the land too much. But moving dirt's expensive, but also bad for the environment. Minimize that and then make it a win-win. So, I think being creative like that and working with a municipality that is willing to take on a green space, knowing that it'll benefit the current users, but the future of the kids, what better place to go play in the woods, right? And
Yeah,
hang out, and that to me is the better than any playground, just go play in the mud, right? Go
for
hang
sure.
out.
Yeah. I used to
Yeah.
play in the woods all the time as a kid. We had
Yep.
50 acres right behind my house that has since been developed into a subdivision. But when I was a kid, like it was just forest and it was amazing. It's so
Yeah.
much fun.
And it's funny now, we're one of our landscape architects is doing natural or, playgrounds. Well, we used to make them up in the woods. Now we have to create them sometimes to make them
Yeah.
look like mud and, you know, stumps and ropes and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of interesting that we're going full circle there.
Yeah. That's cool. One of the one of the conversations I have oftentimes with developers that want to come into the market is that, Cincinnati is a challenging place to build for a bunch of reasons, both municipal and, topography wise. Like,
Yeah.
how do you, I guess, as a landscape architect, how do you help your clients navigate some of those challenges? Because there's some sites, like there's one over in Newport that it's beautiful, but you can't get to it. Like,
Right. Yeah.
so how do you, it's, I guess Cincinnati's the city of seven hills. How
Right.
do you help navigate that?
Well, I think is first having the relationships and not just telling your clients what they want to hear sometimes. And
Mhm.
sometimes the answers, they might not like our answers. And we're honest with them, and we always tackle it with a team. So we always have a civil engineer, we have a landscape architect, sometimes an architect, on depending on the project, and we really spend some time on a feasibility study because a lot of people, look at a development in a two-dimensional plan, right? Does it fit on the site because it's a square site? But the third dimension, the topography is there, but we try not to ignore that. You know, we upfront do our best to give our best opinion, whether you like it or not, knowing that you have to build a pro forma. Does it work or not? Things like access to a tough site. Yeah, you might be able to get to it, but now you have, 500 linear feet of no loaded street. Yeah, you can get there, but is it work or not? And so I think that honesty with our developer clients has given us that reputation where they know what they're going to get from us. They're going to get that honest answer, and anything is possible. You throw enough money at it, right? We
Yeah.
can make it work. But we've been pretty successful in working on unique sites. I mean, we've done our fair share of unique sites that are tough, but the deal works. So okay, let's figure out how the deal works, and we ask a lot of questions up front. What do you will? What is it? What can the performer support? Right? Does it work? And so it's always a challenge, and making sure that we look at that third dimension, that the 3D part is important, just as much as sanitary and sanitary service, water service, and zoning, and all the fun stuff that we have to deal with as developers and designers. That's worked for us in the past, and we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah. Who would be like your ideal client, or what's your ICP, your ideal customer profile?
So our ideal customer is the people that consider us as your trusted advisors, that we get that phone call when they have a problem and they need to solve it. And we've been lucky that I mentioned Spring Grove for 100 and some, 50, 60 years, where we're the trusted advisor. To us, that's the ideal client. It doesn't matter what industry it's in. Yes, there are the fun projects where I get to do submarines, right? Of course,
Yeah.
those are great. But those are the ones that we value, those relationships where they know that they have a problem and they're looking for us to help them solve that problem. And to me, those are the fun ones, because I can see the relief in their face when they either know the answer, whether it's a good answer or a bad answer, they at least know the answer. And we've been very successful with those projects with clients that have been with us 30, 40, 50 years, obviously 160 some as well.
Yeah.
So those are the clients that we like.
What's the full spectrum of services that MSP offers?
So we land surveying, from, property surveys, Alta surveys, construction staking, things like that. We have civil engineering, so subdivision design, commercial design, infrastructure, utilities, roadways. We have architecture, from corporate to educational to office, industrial, landscape architecture, as we talked about, parks and rec, municipal, mixed-use developments, multifamily, interior design. We have interior design as one of our main newer services. And it's one of those things that is an important component that we separated from architecture because we think it's a great value. And then planning. One of the things that we have in our, as part of our landscape architecture department, is planning is underneath the same wing, but we team up a lot with folks to do comprehensive plans for communities. I'm doing one right now in Nebraska, where we're getting input from the community to determine how the growth of the neighborhoods need to be, and updating their comprehensive plan, updating their zoning codes, and we're kind of the design arm of that. So it's kind of cool. So that's another one. The planning department is another piece that a lot of people don't know what we do, but that's kind of one example.
That's super interesting. So basically, anybody that's got a piece of dirt and they're trying to figure out what to do, you'd be the guy to call.
Yeah, that would be great. Or we do this a lot. Or sometimes we know who you need to call. That's we understand sometimes that we might not be good at something, but we usually know somebody, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's an environmental issue, there's a lot of great environmental consultants, structural engineers, mechanical, electrical, plumbing folks that we're part of our team, and we have to collaborate. So, but yeah, hopefully they call me first, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, you're a good connector of people. What's the best way to get in touch with you if somebody's interested in reaching out?
Well, our website, mspdesign.com, you can kind of see what we do. But I'm one of those guys that I like to talk to people on the phone and see how we can work out. So, my 513-759-3224 direct line is probably everywhere. I don't mind talking to people and connecting. As you said, I love the connection part of our business.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of the things that's enabled you to be as successful as you have been. So,
I appreciate that.
yeah. Well, Jose, I really appreciate your time today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Well, I appreciate it. And thanks for the opportunity. As we mentioned at the beginning, I always enjoy the conversations that we have and the opportunities that we brainstorm together. So let's continue doing that. And thanks for the invite. And I'm so glad that you're doing these podcasts. It's great. You're really good at it. So I
Thanks, man.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.